Hi, Michael Buffer here, and you are watching Lights Out.
A new undisputed champion is crowned in the super lightweight division. The never-ending saga up in the heavyweight division continues, and also a huge mega fight announced in the 147-pound division. This is Lights Out. I am Faisal Khan, and this is the Lights Out Boxing Podcast, our 34th podcast. With me, delighted to be joined all the way from the United States of America, the founder of the Good Boxing Podcast, Josh Sayers. Josh, it's good evening to good afternoon by the looks of your beautiful scenery in the background there. How you doing?
Doing pretty well, honestly. After last night's fights, what a good night. And honestly, with the stuff that's going on in boxing, I can't remember another more exciting time in boxing, truthfully. We got the fight you were talking about, Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence, Anthony Joshua, and potentially who knows who he's going to fight now. You got Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and undisputed Josh Taylor. I can't remember another time I woke up that happy in a while. So
there is so much to talk about, which is exactly what we're going to do in today's podcast. But before we get started, just want to remind the viewers out there the usual stuff. If they haven't already, make sure they hit that subscribe button. Visit us on all of our social media platforms to listen to this podcast in one of the audio platforms. The links will be below in the description. And more importantly, don't forget to check out Josh's platform, the Good Boxing Podcast. Links are in the description for his social media pages and his YouTube channel, his TikTok account. Make sure you give Josh a follow. And don't forget to check his daily episodes out, which he's uploading constantly. And this is why I love having Josh on here, because his sport for the boxing, his love for the sport of boxing is huge. You know, I don't think I've ever met anyone else who loves the sport more than Josh does right now. But Josh, as you said, there's so much to talk about right now, but we got to start off with last night's huge fight up in the super lightweight division, because we do have a new undisputed super lightweight champion. That's right. Josh Taylor joins the elite list as an undisputed champion. He beat Jose Ramirez last night. All the belts were on the line. As a boxing fan, disappointed that none of the broadcasters from the UK managed to jump on this, but credit to ESPN and Top Rank and Fight TV for doing what they had to do. A brilliant fight last night. Josh Taylor is entertaining as fuck. He's one of the biggest faces in boxing right now. Don't care what anyone says. You know, an undisputed champion after 18 fights. Muhammad Ali Trophy winner. The guy is getting better and better as time goes on. But Josh, as my brother Asif likes to call you, the tactical side of the podcast. Break it down for us. What was your take on Taylor's performance last night against Jose Ramirez?
I mean, essentially, it was a masterclass by Josh Taylor. I do feel tactically, believe it or not, he literally fought Jose Ramirez's game. He wanted to sit there, stand his ground, not capitulate too much on the back foot and dance around. He actually went out for the knockout, and you saw that over and over throughout the fight. Did he get it? Was he successful? No. But you did see the two knockdowns, right, where he caught Jose Ramirez lunging in. Like I had mentioned in my breakdown, when he fought Cepeda and other lefties, he doesn't jab. So he was just trying to run in and throw that right hand. And I got to say, Ben Davison did a fantastic job game planning that straight left where he bent to the side, got out the way, and then hit him with that nice short left hook or left straight. And then the uppercut, Josh Taylor on the inside just kept tying up Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez, I don't know for what reason, decided to think that, hey, I'm not going to protect myself at all times, and got hit with an uppercut. And that was actually, I was very surprised that that happened to Jose Ramirez, considering that he's such a, like he's known for his inside fighting. It was kind of a lapse of judgment in his part.
It was a brilliant performance last night from Josh Taylor. You take nothing away from Jose Ramirez as well. As you mentioned, Ben Davison's game plan was spot on. I just want to put on note that Ben Davison has been a full-time trainer since 2017. And within that time, he's trained Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders. He's training a few other fighters. And of course, he's now training the undisputed champion at super lightweight. And every time I've seen Ben Davison in the corner of any fighter, whether it be Fury or Saunders, Josh Taylor, or even a young kid called Shabazz Masood that he's looking after that I know quite well. I've always been impressed with him. I thought his game plan in the first fight between Fury and Wilder was pretty spot on. But Ben Davison is one of these coaches that is just coming up. He's a fantastic coach. He got a lot of criticism after Tyson Fury's fight against Otto Wallin, which I thought was a bit unfair. A lot of people had him down as sort of a fitness type of, one of these coaches to get a boxer fully fit and get his energy levels running through camp. But I think last night Ben Davison proved why he is one of the best up-and-coming coaches in the world. But as we mentioned, Josh Taylor is now the undisputed champion in the super lightweight division. We talked about it on Instagram today. Now that you've had time to digest it, you said a fight with Teofimo Lopez should be his next move. I think he should make the move up to 147 pounds. That is the welterweight division. It's been a few hours since that conversation. What's your gut feeling now? What is the next move for Josh Taylor after he became the undisputed champion last night?
Well, personally, you have to look at the landscape, right? So Josh Taylor is under the Top Rank umbrella, and clearly Top Rank, for the exception of they have to fight Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder, so that's going to be a co-promotion. But at 147, you really haven't seen Bob Arum look out and try to go across the pond in order to make fights for Terence Crawford. I actually think the Terence Crawford and Josh Taylor fight makes sense. You have the former undisputed 140-pound champion taking on the current undisputed champion at 140, and I think that's a good battle between the two. I wish the fight would take place at 140 because Josh Taylor, I don't know how he's going to look at 147, but the fight that I'm looking at more and more that I think makes the most sense, I know I had said Teofimo, but that's more because it would be nice to see Teofimo potentially fight Josh Taylor to be double undisputed, even though the Josh Taylor camp, Ben Davis and all these guys, and Devin Haney are trying to say that Teofimo's not undisputed, and that's just a whole nother thing. But I think the fight that makes sense is Mikey Garcia at 140.
Well, the options are endless for Josh Taylor, no doubt about that. And as you mentioned, Mikey Garcia is another name. But, you look at the size of Mikey Garcia, and I think he even struggles to make 147 right now. I don't know what he's doing in terms of looking after himself, but I seen him at one of the fights a few weeks ago. That guy looks heavier than 147 right now.
Absolutely.
Would I like to see a fight with Mikey Garcia? Yes. Would I like to see Josh Taylor up at 147? 100%. But a fight with Terence Crawford is what a lot of fans are calling for on social media today. Now, me personally, you got to try and remember that, yes, it's only £7. It may not seem like a lot, but it is a lot. And I think the best thing right now, what he needs to do is plant his feet in that division. And I think a fight with someone like a Ugas or even a Sean Porter is his best next move. Would I want to see him fight someone like Jack Catterall down at super lightweight, even though he's the undisputed champion in that division? And even though Jack Catterall is sort of, next in line, probably not, because boxing works in ways where, money does all the talking these days, and wherever the money is, the fighters are going to go, and I don't mean no disrespect, but I don't think that fight generates a lot of money. And I do think the bigger paydays and the bigger tests are in the division above, which is the welterweight division. But as you mentioned, Bob Arum does not like mixing business with pleasure. He struggled to make fights with Terence Crawford against PBC fighters, i.e. Errol Spence. We're struggling to see him make that fight between Terence Crawford and Sean Porter. It just makes you question what is Sean Porter's next move and what is Terence Crawford's next move. But obviously, we have to remember two people make a fight. Jose Ramirez showed a ton of heart last night. He showed why he was in that fight last night. And listen, nothing taken away from Jose Ramirez last night. An incredible fighter. I even had him ahead after a few of the rounds. I thought I believe the second and the third round was the best we saw of Jose Ramirez in that fight. But as you said, those knockdowns, especially the uppercut, completely changed the landscape of that fight. What's next for Jose Ramirez? I like the Regis Prograis fight. I think that's a brilliant fight, and I think those two should be looking to become the king of that division, depending on if Josh Taylor does go up to welterweight.
Yeah, and just to circle back really quick, that's kind of the reason why I said Mikey Garcia is I think it's the perfect fight in terms of even if he were to fight Mikey Garcia at 147, Mikey Garcia is naturally 140, 135. So it'll kind of be a good segue into settling into 147. And then you could either go fight Terence Crawford or if 147 is not for you, you could kind of go back downwards. But in terms of Jose Ramirez and Regis Prograis, I think that's a fantastic fight between both of them. I think it's do you want to fight a southpaw again after well, I guess you do want to get back in there with a southpaw just to kind of reestablish like, hey, I got better. And Regis Prograis is a really, really good southpaw. So regardless, it's an all action fight. And I don't know. I think Prograis got that one. I just think Jose Ramirez just doesn't fight lefties well. I mean, Cepeda, Josh Taylor, you keep seeing the same thing. And do you think Jose Ramirez could kind of change his temperament? And at 142, he looks like he's dying, honestly. Like he looks very drawn.
Josh Taylor was saying throughout the week of the fight, and I thought Josh Taylor brought the heat even before the fight, especially with the confrontation that they had after the weigh-ins. They obviously had a bit of a little scruffle in the corridors after the weigh-in when Josh Taylor pushed Jose Ramirez. But Josh Taylor was constantly saying during the build-up to that fight that he struggled to make weight. I don't question his engine. I thought even till the very last second of that fight, he was still going for Josh Taylor. I thought his performance was very good last night. But I mean, like, look, I like the Regis Prograis fight. I think the Regis Prograis fight does make sense. But I also could see Jose Ramirez going up to 147. If he feels more comfortable going up in a weight, then I don't think he waits around. As you mentioned about Mikey Garcia, you said Mikey Garcia would be the perfect fight for Josh Taylor if he stepped up to 147. But I want to rewind back to, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, to when Mikey Garcia stepped up to 147 pounds. He stepped into the Lions Den with Errol Spence, and he got outclassed. And I strictly put that down to no experience at 147 pounds. I believe he should have taken a lesser tough challenge than Errol Spence. So I think Josh Taylor, listen, he's undisputed champion. He's going in the right direction. But right now, for me, he needs to learn his trade at 147 pounds. I think the perfect fight at 147 pounds is either against a Ugas, maybe even a Sean Porter. Sean Porter's not fought in a while. I think Bob Arum, Top Rank, ESPN, they need to be looking at doing it right with him at 147 pounds. 1-2 wins at 147, then you can look at the likes of Crawford, the likes of Spence. But we'll be talking about the 147 division in depth just a little bit later on in the podcast. We need to move on now because we need to talk about the hiccup up at heavyweight. Because last Sunday evening, UK time, Tyson Fury announced on his social media platforms that he'd spoken to one of the princes of Saudi Arabia. There's hundreds, to be honest. And he more or less confirmed that the fight against Anthony Joshua in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was to take place on August the 14th. What happens a night later? Oh, ding, ding, ding. Deontay Wilder wins an arbitration court case, and that court case has ordered Tyson Fury to fight Deontay Wilder for a third time. We know after watching last night's Top Rank show that contracts have been signed from both sides, and the fight is set for July the 24th. Boxing fans are absolutely fuming in the UK. We've been listening for months and months and months, excuse after excuse, reason after reason, but just when it looked like something was getting done, just when it looked like people were actually buying into it, that fight between Fury and Joshua has fallen completely flat out on the floor. Tyson Fury will now take on Deontay Wilder. And then as well, during last week, the WBO have ordered Anthony Joshua to take on Oleksandr Usyk. Both sides have until May the 31st to agree terms, or the fight will go to a purse bid. Josh, what is your thoughts on the latest travesty up in the heavyweight division right now?
I mean, here's the thing. When it comes to negotiations, and I know people want to be very, very patient and, they want to report on any sort of inkling of a piece of news that comes out like, oh, this fight can happen, this fight can happen. But at the end of the day, I know everyone's a little annoyed, but he had a rematch clause, and a contract is a contract for a reason. If you don't honor Deontay Wilder's rematch clause, then how good is a contract between Fury and Joshua? Like, if you're not going to honor a contract, I know we're not happy. I'd rather see Joshua and Tyson Fury for sure, 100%. But at the end of the day, these guys were negotiating in the media. You have people parading around saying, oh, the fight's going to happen, the fight's going to happen. and you had an arbitration meeting. It wasn't, a formality like, oh, we already kind of know what's going to happen. We're just going to hear it out, and then Deontay Wilder's going to lose. It was literally a arbitration meeting for that rematch clause and whether or not it's binding. And I got to say, Eddie Hearn was out there saying, oh, this fight's definitely a done deal. Oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I got to say, Bob Arum was a little more hesitant. He was a little more conservative. And that announcement was more like, oh, is the funding there? I'll fight if the funding is available. And at the end of the day, Al Heyman is not stupid. You're talking about one of the most powerful men in boxing. There's no way he's going to let his heavyweight champion just get thrown to the side after he gave Tyson Fury several chances, right? Because he's the one that gave Tyson Fury that fight the first time. He didn't need to fight Fury, Deontay Wilder. And then after, he fought him again because of the whole, he got up in the story, the pay-per-view it became a more massive fight, right? He signed with Top Rank. Things got much bigger, but you sign rematch clauses for this very reason. And I get it that the fans are upset, but at the same time, you can't fault Deontay Wilder for exercising his rematch clause. And no one's going to pay him $20 million to walk away. I know people think $20 million, people get desensitized to how much that is, but $20 million just to tell someone to walk away so other two people can fight, you're not going to find that kind of money anywhere just to kind of give to Deontay Wilder, especially somebody like Bob Arum. No way he's giving $20 million to someone that he knows his guy can beat, right? He's destroyed Wilder once. Why not do it again? So I'm sad the fight's not happening, but at the same time, like, what do we expect? There's a rematch clause, right? So I don't know.
When the news broke to us, I obviously shared it out to our followers on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and the hashtag that I used was boxing politics. I mean, like, how do you go from one day announcing the big mega fight, the big undisputed fight that everyone's been calling for since Tyson Fury dethroned Deontay Wilder last year, to then, sort of losing a court case that we were told by Bob Arum that, the court case won't be an issue. And then to now, a week later, having it in our mind that July 24th is when we're going to see Wilder versus Fury 3. Now, we can sit here and say, look, just take the third fight and Joshua should fight Usyk. But what I see in front of me is a major setback, because I sort of rewind this back to 2 years ago. Everybody thought that Joshua beats Ruiz in New York, Madison Square Garden, and it's a walk in the park. And then finally we can get the big Joshua versus Wilder fight. That didn't happen. Now, whether we admit it or not, or whether we like it or not, Deontay Wilder, for me, is still the most dangerous puncher in the whole of boxing today. Oleksandr Usyk is a former undisputed cruiserweight champion, and he's a former Olympian. We're not just talking about your average Joes in boxing. We're not talking about your journeyman in boxing. Tyson Fury in the first fight schooled Deontay Wilder, but you see Deontay Wilder still had it in his locker that he can hurt Tyson Fury. And Oleksandr Usyk's a fighter that's not really been tested up at heavyweight. And I believe the better the opponent for Usyk, the better he fights. So it makes me think, are we going to see Fury versus Joshua? Because what I can see happening, and I hate to say it, but I look at the Wilder Fury 3 fight and I look at the Joshua versus Usyk fight as banana skins for Fury and Joshua. Because many people said that Joshua lost against Andy Ruiz because he was too focused on the undisputed clash with Deontay Wilder. He was too focused on trying to get a fight with Tyson Fury. But now when I look at it, I think the same thing's going to happen. I can see Fury or Joshua losing their next fight. Josh, what's your thoughts on what I've just said to you? Can you see them slipping up?
I mean, look, Deontay Wilder, the one thing about punchers is when you kind of step up to a puncher and you bully the bully for the first time, the cliche is you don't know how they're going to come back. So what did Deontay Wilder do? He got a new trainer. He is trying to repackage himself and is essentially trying to make a case for him being able to win the fight versus Tyson Fury. Will he? He has a shot, but at the end of the day, if Tyson Fury loses to Deontay Wilder, then the undisputed fight doesn't really matter because then Deontay Wilder earned the right to get the belt. He won his belt back, and that's what rematch clauses are for, right? But if Usyk beats Joshua, then it kind of just confirms that Joshua was, I don't want to sit here and say a paper champion, but Usyk is going to get, in my opinion, I think Oleksandr Usyk, a heavyweight, do it for the money, make your money, you deserve it. But Anthony Joshua is going to beat the dog shit out of Usyk. I know he can move. I know he has skills. I know he was an undisputed cruiserweight champion. But if Anthony Joshua can't break down and walk down Oleksandr Usyk, who makes the same moves like Lomachenko over and over to the same side, then he doesn't deserve to be undisputed champion. Then he shouldn't be fighting for the undisputed championship of the world. And it's a harsh opinion, and it's easy for me to critique and say, like, look, Usyk maybe looks a little more tricky in the ring. But if you are going to be undisputed, you got to be able to beat a bloated cruiserweight because the guy doesn't look like a heavyweight. Can we at least agree that? Because Del Boy looked way bigger than Usyk. I mean, he was hitting Usyk and he couldn't handle Del Boy. Joshua, for as much as I don't think he's going to be Fury, is way better than Chisora. Can we at least agree?
Yeah, we can definitely agree on that one.
So I think he's going to pressure Usyk. He can box in the back foot against Usyk because Usyk still hasn't tested himself going forward. He's always flight-footed. I think Anthony Joshua contains all of the tools to beat Oleksandr Usyk. And that's why undisputed fights don't happen, because of hiccups. And if it doesn't happen, will I be upset? Absolutely. But Tyson Fury, I feel like Deontay Wilder can't make that much of an adjustment that fast. And he's tasted Deontay Wilder's power already. I feel like even in that second fight, a lot of people don't remember, but Deontay Wilder hit Tyson Fury with the hardest right hand in that first round, and he looked it off and then continued to walk him down. I kind of felt like we had spoken. I thought the fight was going to happen, right? 100%. And then when I started looking at film, I'm like, Tyson Fury is way too in shape to fight somebody in August. Like, I can't see him fighting for 3-4 months. I mean, training 3-4 months at the weight he was at for a training camp, because Tyson Fury overtrains sometimes and he gets neurotic and then just loses focus or whatever Tyson Fury's case is. So when I saw him in shape-ish, I'm like, he's fighting Deontay Wilder 100%. And I mentioned in one of my episodes, I'm like, I really feel more and more it's going to actually happen where that rematch clause is going to be exercised, because the guy, I feel like we got hoodwinked, honestly. Eddie Hearn's trying to save face and saying, oh, it's Tyson Fury, top rank. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't have been trying to negotiate this fight in the media. He could do that with Canelo, but when someone has a court case, you cannot say that you have a fight, especially with a rematch clause.
I mean, I look at it from, look, everything you just said. You say that Tyson Fury looked too in shape to fight for August. You got a good point there. I think since Tyson Fury's come back into the sport since 2018, I believe this is the best shape he's in.
Yeah,
but
he's in fantastic shape.
Genuinely believe he was in shape for Anthony Joshua, not Deontay Wilder. Now, what I don't buy is why would they? I mean, during the last few days, the end of last week, I was very critical of Tyson Fury. And anyone who knows me, I'm a big Tyson Fury fan. He's my favorite fighter.
Same.
In the world of boxing right now. I love his character. I love what he brings to the heavyweight division. And even the last 3 or 4 days, I've been saying, like, you're announcing the Joshua fight, and then all of a sudden this happens. I think both parties have got to take a part to blame in this. I think Eddie Hearn, who, let's be honest with each other, he is the best promoter in the world right now, so he knows how these arbitration cases go down. I'm pretty sure he's been in a few in his time, and if not, I'm pretty sure his old man Barry Hill has been in a few this time. I think it's just poor promoting. That's what I think it is. I think the fact that this arbitration case has loomed over him for a very, very long time, for them to sort of look at it and think, yeah, nothing's going to happen, it's just going to get blown out the window, and then we can get our big mega fight between Fury versus Joshua. That for me just shows very bad promoting. That for me just shows very bad managing. That the fact that they still tried making the Fury versus Joshua fight, a lot of back and forth between both camps, and now this happened. So I think both teams need to play a huge part in this, but I also think Tyson Fury has lost a lot of fans. He's lost a lot of fans because this is the fight everybody wants. But one thing I will say is Wilder versus Fury 3, I don't mind that fight. I thought
don't
the
mind
first two fights were good. I thought the build-up were very good. A lot of questions get answered in this fight. Is Deontay Wilder, will he and always will be a one-trick pony? Can he develop? Can he become different under Malik Scott? You see him punching the pads and the mitts, and you see him lifting these big tree logs in his back garden in Alabama. I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions. Does Tyson Fury, is he too, is he overshadowing this fight? Is his eye on Anthony Joshua? There's going to be so many questions leading up into this fight between Wilder versus Fury. How does this fight break down for you? Do you think Fury does it again? Do you think he stops Wilder? Or do you think Wilder retains his WBC title and we get another hurdle, another obstacle in this heavyweight division to crown an undisputed king?
I mean, truthfully, tactically, if I'm going to be honest with you, if Tyson Fury tries to do the same exact thing, Deontay Wilder is going to be prepared for it. So, hence, like if you look at his body composition, he kind of looks a little leaner, even more, way less like heavy and big, like he did when he first fought Deontay. Well, the second time he fought Deontay Wilder, you saw a clear size adjustment, right? He came in like 290, 285, or whatever he was, right? That he came in for the fight. I think in this fight, he's going to have to box and then stand his ground in spurts where he doesn't get as tired. So he doesn't have to run the entire time. Deontay Wilder needs some sort of resistance. And you also got to take away Wilder's confidence. What you don't want to do is have Deontay Wilder thinking, oh, Tyson Fury's moving on me. I have these combination punches I could throw now. I have my power back. I believe. If you make Wilder believe, then Tyson Fury has a problem, because regardless of whatever he did that second fight, Deontay Wilder had no idea some other person would stand up to him and try to back him up, right? The only person that kind of tried to do it was Luis Ortiz, and Ortiz had some success, but he hurt Wilder. He got a little confident, then you saw what happened. Then the second fight, he outboxed Deontay Wilder, and like you said, you fall asleep 1 second, it's over. I think Tyson Fury is going to pull it off. I just don't think he could just go out there and try to blast him again like he did, because Deontay Wilder is going to be prepared for that. And the only reason why the game plan worked the second time was Deontay Wilder had no idea this guy was going to come out and just bully him. No one thought that, truthfully. I mean, they could say whatever they want, hindsight 2020. I thought maybe he would try going forward because based on the 12th round, he did have some success. But no one thought he was going to go out there and legitimately just be on the front foot. No foot off the gas, all gas, no brakes, and went after it. So tactically, if Tyson Fury fights the same fight, you may run into something and it's a lot more dangerous. But he can box, he can move, then bang a little bit here and there. But I still think he wins the fight.
Well, this is where I said a lot of questions will be asked leading up to that third fight. Thank God it's July 24th. I think less than 6 or 7 weeks away. Obviously, no main post has been released, but you've seen on social media last night that Tyson Fury signed his side of the contract, and so has Deontay Wilder. Wilder versus Fury 3 looks to be set. It's another big fight. I would have been a lot more upset if it wasn't Wilder. I would have been a lot more happy if it was Anthony Joshua, but it's not. It's a third fight between Fury versus Wilder. Can Deontay Wilder become a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world? Tyson Fury defends his heavyweight title for the first time. So listen, there's big question marks hanging over this fight. And of course, Usyk versus Joshua is a fight that's in the pipeline. And I'm pretty sure somewhere underneath all this, a deal has probably already been done, because even Eddie Hearn's taken a massive, backlash from this. He's taken a massive...
And I think the biggest winner is PBC.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
I feel like Al Heyman went out there and just flexed on Arum and Eddie Hearn, because you've been hearing a lot about Triller, Eddie Hearn, Canelo this. I feel like Showtime, PBC hasn't really made any moves in these last 2 weeks. Between the Wilder announcement, the Spence Pacquiao, PBC is coming out and letting everyone know that, hey, you've been talking about Triller, you've been talking about this, you've been talking about that. PBC is still here, and Al Heyman flexed, honestly.
And massive credit to Al Heyman as well. I mean, he proved he's in the game for a reason. He's proved he's got some of the best fighters in the game.
And the best lawyers too.
100%. If anyone out there needs a good lawyer, contact Al Heyman. Might cost you a lot of money, but hey, it gets the job done. We are all set for Fury versus Wilder 3. The Gypsy King versus the Bronze Bomber. The press conferences between them two have been amazing over the years. I was lucky enough to be at their first press conference in London when they almost went toe to toe with each other. I was literally sat right opposite them, and well, listen, I'm not going to say I'm mega excited for it, but I don't mind Fury versus Wilder 3. Let's see what happens. Let's move on because, as we said during the podcast, it's not only one of many things we need to talk about. Because the welterweight division, the question has finally been answered. What's the next move for the three champions in that division? And it got released on the other night what the next move is. Bang. There you go. Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. The 42-year-old WBA welterweight champion of the world takes on the unified welterweight champion of the world. The IBF and the WBC are one of my favorite fighters today. And for me, easy in the top 5 right now, Errol Spence Jr. It seemed like a couple of months ago we were set for Pacquiao versus Crawford. That fell through. And then we're hearing rumors of Pacquiao fighting Errol Spence. That went quiet. Then we heard Pacquiao versus Mikey Garcia. We heard Pacquiao versus Ryan Garcia. But then it breaks to us the other night that it's been confirmed. August the 31st, Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City, baby. It is happening. Manny Pacquiao takes on Errol Spence Jr. For me, easily one of the best fights we made in boxing today. Josh, thoughts on this one?
I think it's a fantastic fight. Regardless if you think Errol Spence is going to win or whether you think Manny Pacquiao is just a legend that just never dies and always has a fighting chance, it's a great fight. You have two champions fighting in a fight for 3 belts, and whoever wins this fight, whether it's Spence or Pacquiao, you immediately run the welterweight division. You have all of the leverage, and it's going to be so amazing to break down Errol Spence, who is in his prime. You cannot argue that Errol Spence right now is in the prime of his career. Big, strong, coming down from 165, 170 at times. Like, he's doing better with his weight. And he's fighting the guy that can give anyone issues. I mean, Pacquiao for a couple of rounds gave Floyd issues with his footwork, and he's gotten the best of many, many champions. Pacquiao's fought everyone. Right? People question the timing sometimes, catchweight king. There were all the critiques, and honestly, everyone gets critiqued. But Pacquiao is the real deal. You saw what he did to Keith Thurman, and arguably could beat anyone on any given day. But I don't even want to make my pick yet because I want to see Errol Spence's tapes against lefties. But it's such a good fight. I can't even right now, off the top of my head, I'm going to lean towards Spence because he's just, at a certain point, the old guy gets old, but maybe Pacquiao doesn't get old. So
I've always said Manny Pacquiao for me has gotten better with age. I thought the Keith Thurman fight was an A-star performance. You know, he stunned everybody. You know, I remember watching that fight. I watched it with a group of friends, a friend of mine, and my group of friends were all on Keith Thurman's side. Manny Pacquiao's too old. You know, he can't win a world title at 40 years of age. Oh, he's a great fighter, but he's had his time. And what do you know? First round, he puts down Keith Thurman. And I think that, for me, just sort of made, you know, the landscape for the rest of the fight. We're talking about one of the all-time greats here, you know, an 8-division world champion. You know, the guy's won world titles in his, you know, early teens, his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, and he's fought everyone out there. He's fought Floyd. He's fought everybody. You know, I mean, I'm not even going to go over the names he's fought because if you know your boxing, when you say the name Manny Pacquiao, you need to know at least 90% of this guy's history. This guy is a role model for the sport. He's a legend of the sport. You know, and as a fan, you know, what really bugs me is that people say, yeah, but he got schooled by Floyd. But you look at the difference between them two right now. And I don't want to criticize Floyd. For me, I've got Floyd down as the greatest fighter of all time. But Floyd, at the age he is fighting YouTubers. Manny Pacquiao's out there still fighting the best of the world. Now, in terms of the fight between him and Errol Spence, the one thing that slightly does worry me is ring inactivity. And I say it all the time, whether it's boxing, whether it's the UFC, the ring inactivity always plays its part. Been at the ring for 2 years. He's not getting in the ring with anyone. He's getting in the ring with the unified welterweight champion, the guy that, for me, is the face right now in this division. And whether you like it or not, whether fans like it or not, Errol Spence holds the majority of the marbles in that division. Now, as my brother Asif likes to call you, the tactician of the group, What does Errol Spence have to do to beat Manny Pacquiao? Not just any Manny Pacquiao, but a 42-year-old Manny Pacquiao that has not fought in over 2 years.
Okay. So first things first, look, one thing I'm going to give Errol Spence is he has an extensive amateur background, right? He almost made the Olympics. He was an alternate. He's fought very, very high level guys and has access to very good sparring. So, his brother trains with, sorry, his brother. Yeah, his brother, he trains with Jermel Charlo, who is Jamal Charlo's brother. So, he's going to get access to Arislandi Lara to get the angles, to get the trickiness of the lefty style. And the fact that he's a high level lefty himself, the reason why I give Errol Spence a great chance is Pacquiao's a very angular fighter, dynamic, likes to go in and out, side and side, turn, give you very, very tricky things that you're not going to see. Plus, he's very quick. But the one thing that Errol does have is I feel he's going to have a very good chance of sealing Pacquiao out with that jab, probe it, get the reach. And the fact that he's not going to get bothered by Pacquiao's angles by just stepping back, learning how to kind of cancel and neutralize the angles, very similar to what Floyd did, where he kept him on the outside, kind of never let Pacquiao get into his herky-jerky, feint you in and out, get good foot position on you. And on the inside, I just don't see Pacquiao being able to, once he does get in, Errol's a very strong, solid defensive fighter. So when Pacquiao gets in, he's going to have to pay a tremendous toll for trying to get in. And eventually, over 12 rounds, I could see Pacquiao having a hard time scoring enough to win. I don't think he's going to get shut out completely because you're talking about Manny Pacquiao. Like, he's going to get his off, and you're going to have to eat some, and you may get hit with a couple shots, may get rocked, or maybe even dropped. I mean, we've never seen Errol Spence really, really hurt, but the one time he did get hurt was against a lefty, and it was pretty bad, actually. I remember that watching that fight, and Errol Spence got hit with a shot. I was like, oh, Errol's actually really, really hurt. So maybe Pacquiao can pull that off. But again, I like to look at who has certain tools that are going to give the other fighter trouble. Pacquiao has the speed advantage 100%. But given the fact that this guy is so tall, maybe he can neutralize that speed advantage by taking those steps back, using those long arms to give him a little more time. And the fact that he's in his prime, you saw his speed was very underrated. I mean, Mikey Garcia thought he was going to get in, even though Mikey's not the fastest fighter. But he said it like, oh, damn, I didn't expect him to be that fast and like that fleet-footed on the back foot. Sean Porter also is a very explosive, jumps in, and you saw how he's able to neutralize Sean Porter, even though Pacquiao is on another level in terms of speed and technique than Sean Porter. But raw aggression, raw speed, explosive, Sean Porter has a lot of those attributes, even though he's a righty and whatnot. So I'm just curious to see how Pacquiao looks when he's training. You got to look at how Errol comes in. Is he going to take it seriously? I think he is, because Errol's not even walking around big anymore. He's coming in shape, and you saw in that Danny Garcia fight, he was ready.
I mean, for me, look, you can have Kell Brook on your record. You can have Danny Garcia on your record. You can have Sean Porter on your record. You can have Mikey Garcia on your record. Not everybody has Manny Pacquiao on their record. And for me, this is the biggest fight of Errol Spence's career.
Oh, 1,000%.
Forget if he ever does fight Terence Crawford, or forget a potential fight with Canelo at some date, or maybe even going up to, super welterweight, or forget any fight. He could fight Crawford 10 times after this fight. This is the biggest fight of his career. And one thing I like about this fight is, and again, tactical side of it, I like you doing it, the breakdowns and stuff, but I just think you got two relentless fighters who are going to fight on the inside. You're going to see an all-out war for me. I said after the fight with Sean Porter and Errol Spence, I don't think you get a better fight at 147 for a very long time. I think this fight tops it. The fight between Spence and Porter is a fight I've watched over and over again because of just how good a fight is. I do believe that this fight will be fight of the year for me, because I look at it in two ways. The world is going to be watching Errol Spence, and I find it a bit harsh because I don't think Errol Spence gets the credit for his record. And a lot of people have Crawford as a king of that 147 division, but I don't think Crawford's beaten a big name at 147. Yeah, he's beaten Amir Khan, and yeah, he's beaten Kell Brook, and yeah, he's got a win over a few other fighters. Now, he's not got a Danny Garcia, a Mikey Garcia, or a Sean Porter on his record. This fight for me is the biggest fight of Spence's career. 100%. There'll be no fight bigger than this. This is the one fight he needs to win. And I've never once betted against Manny Pacquiao, but unfortunately, this time, just because of ring inactivity and because of how good a fighter Spence is right now, I can't see anything other than an Errol Spence win come August 31st. Josh, what does this mean for Terence Crawford? What's his next move?
I personally think just Bob Arum right now is putting Terence Crawford on a bench. It's done indirectly. You haven't heard anyone being remotely mentioned fighting Terence Crawford for the exception of Manny Pacquiao. And now we're looking back, hindsight 2020. There was never an investor or whoever was supposed to put up the money for Manny Pacquiao. That didn't come to fruition, right? So I just don't know who Terence Crawford's going to fight. He can't go and fight like another Kavalaskis or anyone of that nature. Sean Porter and Keith Thurman and all these guys aren't going to take whatever Bob Arum's trying to pay him because he doesn't even want to pay his own fighter, let alone another fighter to come over and fight him. The only one I can maybe see is maybe Jose Ramirez, or maybe even after Jose Ramirez fights like Progress, Josh Taylor is maybe another guy they're trying to mention. But who really even thought Josh Taylor would fight Terence Crawford? Right? We went from Terence Crawford fighting Manny Pacquiao, Sean Porter, and now we're talking about Josh Taylor. Why? Because Top Rank wants to promote within Top Rank. And at 147, there's really no one for Terence Crawford to dance with in the Top Rank stable.
I mean, exciting times in that 147 division. Let's not forget the youngster Virgil Ortiz is also in that division as well. You got some big names in there. I mean,
but he's with Golden Boy, right? So maybe they make that fight.
Well, I'd like to think Top Rank and Golden Boy can work together, but at the moment, Bob Arum's ego is just as bigger than Oscar De La Hoya's ego. So, I mean, would I like to see Ortiz versus Crawford? Yeah, I would, but is it going to happen? No, because both promoters, for me, just aren't promoting their fighters as they should be. I'd love to see Crawford versus Sean Porter. I think that's a big fight. I don't want to see Crawford.
Stylistically, I think Sean Porter is a fantastic test for Terence Crawford because you'll really get to see how he does against someone that's a real 147, will pressure him, not shot, can take a punch, not going to get bothered by switches because Sean Porter has a very good, substantial amateur background. And I think Kenny Porter will come up with a nice game plan. He has a fantastic team around him. They can give him the looks that would bother Terence Crawford because, again, Kenny Porter knows Shakur Stevenson and all these guys, and they're around that system. He knows Bomac. He knows all these guys, and you learn that kind of style, the tricks, the trades, etc. I mean, look at Tony Sims Jr. shocked Elvis Rodriguez, right? And how? Because Tony Sims is around that camp. He's with Michaela K. Karoma, that really, really good USA boxing amateur program. And Sean Porter is around that. So you go up and you fight certain people and you learn all those tricks that befuddle you, that other people get befuddled by. And maybe he can neutralize that for Sean Porter. For Terence Crawford. Because Sean Porter did a good job against Errol Spence. I mean, testament to him, Errol, for trying to fight Sean Porter's fight. And that's why I think that Josh Taylor victory is very, very underrated because he fought Ramirez's game. I feel like Taylor could have boxed a lot more, but he went out there to try to stop Jose Ramirez and fight on the inside, show that, hey, I'm a multifaceted fighter. So to me, I feel you get credit. I mean, that decision, that scorecard was just, come on. Josh Taylor smoked Jose Ramirez. I know people are trying to make it seem like it was it wasn't a close fight. I mean, tactically, come on.
The politics of boxing have already kind of like bashed our heads throughout this last week. I don't think we need to go into the judges' scorecards over last night's fight. If you thought that was bad, I thought Kenny Bayless, a referee that I respect highly in boxing, I thought his performance last night was below par as well. And he got a lot of stick last night on Twitter and the rest of social media. But listen, we get a great fight last night in the undisputed clash between Taylor and Ramirez. Two potential big fights have been announced in Fury versus Wilder 3. And, of course, now we're getting Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence. Exciting times ahead for boxing. But that's obviously all we've got time for today's Lights Out Boxing podcast. And, of course, if the viewers out there, if they haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and don't forget to share as well. And make sure you check out the Good Boxing Podcast. We'll be sharing their links in the description as well, along with their YouTube channel. Make sure you check out Josh's daily episodes. Relentless Josh, I'm going to call him from now, because
I'm trying.
What was it? 100 episodes in 100 days. I think
Yeah,
you're doing like 10 every 2 days, Josh. You need to come over here, man.
The shorts, I don't count those as
Hey,
episodes. But
listen, it's
they're
content,
coming up.
man. Whether they're
That's
7
true.
minutes or 70 minutes long, fair play to you. You are working your socks off. And of course, if you check out Josh's YouTube channel, don't forget to give him a subscribe as well. Make sure you hit that sub button. And congratulations, Josh, on hitting 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
It takes time, brother, but you'll get there, man.
It does. It really does. 100 feels better than 1,500 on Instagram, honestly. It's so much harder on YouTube, for sure.
Well, we'll do whatever we can to support your platform as much as possible. Josh, thank you for joining us. And to the viewers out there, thank you for listening to podcast 34 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast.